Welcome everyone. My name is Reem. I'm the Vice President for Competitions and Events this year in South Australia, from South Australia. And this is our first ever talk for the Beyond Uni series that we've been working on quite well. And you'll probably see your local events around the Beyond Uni series happening as well if you've been to any of them. I'm joined here with Maddie, who is the great person who's helping us out with this stuff. And then we've also got Naomi, who's our special guest today, to talk to us about the Rockingham Youth Centre. First, before we start, I'd like to acknowledge all the lands that we're meeting on today, and that we respect the spiritual relationship that the Indigenous people have with their land. And I would also extend that respect to any Indigenous and Torres Strait Islander people we have here today. So let me introduce Naomi. Naomi is a project architect and senior interior designer, also currently studying urban design, so absolute triple threat over here. He was on the team on this lovely project called the Rockingham Youth Centre, which we have kind of chosen today as it includes a lot of amazing work with architects, new graduates all the way up to senior, as well as the team has collaborated with so many different people on this as well. And it's just a really, really great project. Naomi enjoys a margarita pizza. She's a classic gal. And so, yeah, I'll just pass this on to Naomi now. Would you like to introduce yourself and get started?
Thanks, Reem. Yeah, thanks to Reem and Madeline for inviting us to speak to you today about the Rockingham Youth Centre. It was a project that we completed in 2021 and pretty proud of the end result. So today I'm just going to give you a very overview of the project itself, focusing on some of the processes that we went through to achieve the end result and some of the challenges and wins that occurred along the way. Site Architecture Studio are a Perth-based architectural practice with broad experience designing for public, local and educational communities across metropolitan and remote Western Australia. We were engaged in 2018 by the City of Rockingham as the architect for the major renovation and transformation of a commercial building into a dedicated youth facility. The new centre was to accommodate the delivery of various community services for at-risk young people ranging in age from 12 to 24 years. The project team consisted of Paul Edwards as project director, myself as project architect and interior designer, and was supported by Grace and Aaron, who were both fairly new graduates at the time. Throughout the duration of the project, I completed my registration, and it was a really good project in which I was able to gain valuable experience that did assist me in the exam process. As with all projects, we don't work in isolation, and we acknowledge all the client representatives, consultants, contractors, and other support staff that we collaborated with. As lead architect, it is our responsibility to manage all the members of the team, and although at times this can be pretty challenging, building good relationships and ensuring strong collaborative communication is really important in achieving a good result. Some background on the site for the people that obviously are not Perth-based. The suburb of Rockingham is located in Perth's outer southern suburbs, about 40 kilometres southwest of the Perth CBD. The city encompasses a total land area of approximately 260 square kilometres and is one of Australia's fastest growing areas. The site for the new Rockingham Youth Centre is located within a small commercial industrial zone close to the centre of the suburb. The zone is surrounded by residential and commercial areas. With its close proximity to a major shopping centre and other community facilities, the city saw it as an opportunity to use this facility to activate an otherwise underutilised area. Originally, the city was proposing to fit out the ground floor of an existing office building, and we completed some initial work on this site up to the development of a concept design. Throughout this process, it became pretty clear that the building was not suitable for the city's needs and did not provide them with the space needed for future growth. Unfortunately, this often happens with projects where they may not develop beyond initial design for functional, budget, or other reasons. At this point, our engagement was actually terminated on this project. And then about 6 months later, the city were able to purchase a 2-storey commercial building in the same area, which provided a much greater opportunity to create the space that they needed. So the second building was an existing 2-storey building that had previously been used as an industrial workshop and more recently a commercial retail tenancy. It was built to the boundary on 3 sides with a rear accessway and parking, which limited any future expansion. The adjacent site, including the car park, was also owned by the client and is currently leased by Headspace, who are a youth mental health service. So the construction of the new youth centre in this location provided an opportunity to develop a youth hub. Unlike new builds, refurbishments come with their own set of challenges and often require a considerable more amount of work upfront before even starting on any design concepts. Together with the consultant team, we undertook building inspections to establish the condition of the existing building and what needed to be removed or replaced for compliance or functional reasons. The existing building was very basic industrial construction. The exterior was uninviting with no street presence and lacked any connection with its surroundings. The existing facade with its small openings was intimidating and not conducive to a facility that needed to be approachable and welcoming to all users. Although structurally sound, the existing structure was generally of low aesthetic quality and had resulted in an unappealing interior space. Both levels contained small volumes and enclosed spaces of very low quality fit out. The small windows to only the front and back facades meant limited natural light internally. There was no lift or compliant stairs between levels, and all existing toilet facilities were outdated and non-compliant. The small external space to the rear of the ground floor lacked any connection to the interior, but we did see the potential for this to become an activated outdoor space. These investigations identified early on that a significant portion of the budget would be needed to be spent on upgrading just the base building before even starting on any fit-out work. As a local government project, budget was a driving factor throughout, as it was to be funded by the city themselves with a small Lottery West grant. We all dream of projects with large budgets, but unfortunately they're pretty rare. And in particular, when working in the local government sector, we needed to keep in mind throughout the design process that all decisions would be scrutinised for value for money. In parallel with the site investigations, we also needed to work on developing a brief of what the centre needed to be. This included both the functional nuts and bolts, such as how many rooms does it need, what size should they be, and who would occupy them, as well as the more creative parts, like how should the spaces feel and look, and how should they relate to each other and the building's context. To ensure the facility met the needs and vision of the end users, we encouraged the engagement of stakeholders, both youth and staff, in the development of the brief. And before commencing any design work, led a series of workshops with representatives from the city's youth reference group and youth services teams. In the workshops, we used precedent and emotive images and workshops to ascertain what activities and services they felt were needed in their community, what kind of space they wanted to do those activities in, and what issues were most important to them. The aim of these questions was to define both the function and the feel of the spaces. Similar workshops were held with the Future Centre staff members, and a similar vision began to emerge. Common themes from both groups included protection, comfort, robustness, flexibility, and natural materiality. These workshops not only assist in developing the brief, but they also set the tone for the project, demonstrating that we were striving to deliver a building that would meet the client's needs, even if they didn't know what the needs were at the time, and encouraging the end users to become involved in the process. Using the information gathered from these workshops and faced with a pretty uninspiring and challenging building, we started to overlay the requests onto the existing building parameters. The existing building was built to the boundary on 3 sides, and therefore natural light and internal-external connections was limited. Our approach to improve this was a considered opening up of the facade to allow natural light into the heart of the building. A common request from all the users was outdoor space. However, the limitations of the site made this difficult. Interrogating what it was about the outdoor space that the users were after led us to create spaces that embodied the feelings of the outdoors, natural light, textures, and greenery, while still fitting within the existing building shell. The spatial response to the brief was informed through a need to accommodate the diverse youth services, focusing on the creation of dedicated but flexible space and maximising connectivity. Amenities, circulation, and storage were positioned on the side walls where natural light was limited. Passive zones are located to either side of the entry, allowing for discreet yet secure access to private counselling spaces and small individual study spaces that were private yet still connected to the rest of the space. The positioning of the staff area to the side, but still central to the floor, allowed reception to be deliberately located deep within the space to provide passive surveillance, carefully designed to be welcoming but not overbearing. The remainder of the ground floor was conceived as a flexible active space that stretched from the front door through to the rear undercovered space and beyond into the car park. On the first floor, planning has been considered in a similar manner, with amenities and stores located adjacent to the solid external walls. This level is a more structured, dedicated training and workspace and includes separate staff areas to allow for respite, located to maximise natural light potential. The remainder of the floor is filled with activity and breakout spaces that are used for a wide range of centre-managed training and workshops. As well as driving the functional layouts, the consultation outcomes also informed the final design response. Drawing on this common vision for a building that embodied a strong connection to the environment, we looked to the local landscape of Rockingham to inform our colour palette. Reflecting a coastal landscape, the neutral base palette with strong and vibrant accent colours became a strong driver for both the interiors and external palette of the building. Throughout the entire process, we ensured that consultation and collaboration with both the youth and the staff was maintained. The external mural was commissioned by the city for the wall facing the car park and was an artist's interpretation of a sketch prepared by one of the youth reference group members to reflect the issues of connection to place, culture, and the environment. These same themes are carried through to the interior glazing film, which was designed and hand-drawn by ourselves in collaboration with the youth to represent the local flora and fauna of the region. The continued engagement has given the users layers of involvement in the process, which has resulted in a strong connection and respect for the building. Developing this good relationship with the client is important to not only achieve a good outcome, but also it makes dealing with issues during construction a less painful experience. Likewise, building a good relationship with the contractors on site can assist in this. The construction period can be some of the most challenging times on a project, but also the most interesting. Watching what you have spent months talking about, designing and drawing come to life is really exciting. However, dealing with contractors, unknown site issues, delays, cost variations, mistakes, and client changes can be stressful. As I have learned working on numerous refurbishment projects, the challenges of existing buildings can be most apparent during construction. On this project, where the standard of construction was pretty basic to begin with, once demolition started, a number of issues such as steel that was not fixed correctly were identified and resulted in additional works and costs to the project. To resolve these, we needed to work through the issues and solutions with contractors, engineers, ensuring that the client was also kept informed on what was occurring. Throughout the construction process, errors and omissions in documentation can have a serious consequence on time and cost and chew up a lot of our time in resolving them. As we started construction on site, it was identified that the fire rating of existing structure had not been adequately reviewed during documentation and did not achieve the required fire rating for a new building classification. To overcome this, significant work was required to modify the structure to increase its fire rating, a costly process, or an engineered solution developed which came with a lengthy time process. To address these, we needed to work quickly with the contractor, building surveyor, structural engineer, and product suppliers to find the best method of treating the steel and then present all the options to the client for their approval. Although the final decision came with cost implication, it meant that construction could continue on program, resulting in a better long-term result for the client. By having built a really good relationship with the client from the start of the project, dealing with these issues was able to be done in a professional and understanding manner. Around all the stress and challenges that the construction phase can have, being on site can be an exciting part of the process. On this project, and like many refurbishments, the transformations that happen so quickly on an existing building can be quite incredible. A key moment in this project was when the new openings were cut into the facade and first floor slab. Walking onto site after being so used to seeing the dark and dingy ground floor made us confident that our proposed design solution was going to result in something special. The end result on this project is one that both site and the client are proud of. It is a successful example of adaptive reuse in which otherwise redundant building stock can be repurposed and transformed into a fit-for-purpose facility rather than demolishing and building from scratch. It has resulted in the transformation and renewal of a poor quality building into a vibrant, contemporary youth-focused centre, whose success in its first 12 months of operation has meant that the city needed to grow their youth services team to offer more programs. Although functioning successfully as a youth centre at the moment, the flexibility of the spaces and the high quality fit out has also provided the City of Rockingham with an asset that can be repurposed if the need for a youth centre diminishes in the future. In contrast with the previous facade, the new entry has a welcoming appearance to appeal to the wider demographic that now use the centre. Transparency to the inside invites the user in and activates the public realm. From the main entry, you can see through the whole length of the building and out to the landscape beyond. The new entry is into a casual double volume courtyard where we couldn't create an external space. The use of textured floor tiles reflecting cobbled paving has been used together with carefully selected urban furniture and greenery to create an internal space that offers the same qualities that an external space would. It becomes a transition space from the outside to the inside, aimed at easing and reassuring hesitant visitors before they cross into the more active zones. The double height space with new lift and stair creates the missing connections between levels while addressing previous non-compliance issues. The refined industrial aesthetic reflects the user's desire for a level of sophistication, while meeting the city's need for a durable and low maintenance facility. Selections such as the face block work create a very low maintenance surface that still supports the overall design aesthetic. On both levels, the colour and materials which were informed by the original inspiration have been used to define zones whilst creating a cohesive overall palette. Robust materials and detailing blur the line between internal and external space to create a sophisticated composition. The first floor has a mature aesthetic which was needed to appeal to the wider demographic that may occupy these community spaces. A more muted palette has been used with the blue paint and timber panelling reflecting the ground floor selections. Throughout the first floor, natural light has been maximised with new glazing. The first floor void has allowed for good passive surveillance of the entry and street from staff areas. Connection to the outside, limited by site constraints, have been successfully achieved through other means and has created spaces that are light-filled and visually connected to their surroundings. The ability to open up to the street, to spaces to the outside, has encouraged the users to expand out into the public surrounds. Since its opening, the facility has held numerous events which have flowed between the building and the car park. This results in not only an activated building, but also an activated precinct. What was conceived as an interior refurbishment project has resulted in a public building that has impacted on the whole area. The final result has been one that has exceeded the client expectations, delivered them a facility that they can be proud of, and one which has set a benchmark for other local governments to consider in their approach to youth facilities. At the facility's opening, comments made by youth and staff that it was exactly what they have imagined have reinforced our collaborative design approach and demonstrated that taking the time to listen and involve the users and allowing preconceived ideas to be challenged results in a more successful project. From a learning perspective, this project provided me the opportunity to develop my skills across all project areas in the role of project architect. Under Paul's guidance, I was the main point of contact for the client, consultants and contractors throughout the project, and was responsible for the production of the design drawings and led the team for the documentation package. Some of my key takeaways, lessons learned, both from a project and a personal level that I can carry through to other projects and which assisted me in the registration process. Build a strong relationship with clients and involve them in the decision-making process for the duration of the project. This can result in a more successful outcome in which the end user takes pride in what has been achieved. Take the time to develop a strong brief and vision at the start of the project and continually refer back to it for all decision-making. Ask lots of questions of colleagues, consultants, and contractors. Working collaboratively is much more enjoyable than working in isolation, particularly when overcoming issues. Acknowledge that things go wrong, mistakes are made, and you can't control everything. Sometimes you just have to accept that things that might not be your first choice are what you get. And mostly enjoy the process. Get excited about the wins, even if they are small and seemingly insignificant. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Naomi. Thank you so much for obviously presenting such an amazing project, and congratulations on such a successful project as well. I know previously you've told me that it's a building that, you know, the users take a lot of care of, and they really love the place that you guys have created. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I have a few questions, but if anybody else has any questions please put them in the chat or put your hand up and turn on your camera and your voice and ask a question. But I'll give you guys some time to put your questions in the chat. But I have a question. What do you feel, obviously, like the the topic of this talk is behind the project, and really understanding those things that we don't really, I guess, see when we see a project in its finished form. My question to you is, what do you think was the most challenging part of this? What was something that you felt like challenged you a lot and kind of came out with the biggest lesson?
Yeah, probably budget was a big one on this project. We had grand plans at the start and we had to value engineer it significantly throughout the process. So we were taking things out, and then we'd get it costed again, and we'd put stuff back in, and we took a lot out before going to tender. Unfortunately, we had a really good tender result, so we were able to put some things in, but it is quite frustrating when you come up with these designs and then you have to strip it back and you can't do what you want to do. So that was on this project was a really big challenge, because we didn't have much to start with and the money just all went on upgrading it to be compliant. So we didn't have a huge amount of money to spend on nice finishes and things, but we had to be pretty careful with what we did select, which can be a little bit frustrating.
Yeah, it's even now it looks like an absolutely beautiful building, and the interiors look really rich and beautiful. So that's really interesting to hear. Actually, I wonder how amazing this other project was before the value management.
At one point, it did have an external balcony garden and things like that. It didn't happen, but
yeah, well, no, that's really fantastic. And Ruben, thank you so much for asking that question. He asked the exact same question that I asked you, actually. He said, what were some of the biggest challenges you had when delivering this project, and what were some lessons you learned? So would you like to expand further?
I mean, that was probably one of the biggest one. This was quite a long time project, which can be, you feel like these drag on forever. I think from start to finish, this one was over 3 years. So sometimes you do kind of lose a little bit, not lose interest, but you got to sometimes work pretty hard to maintain interest in it when things get put on hold and then clients change, people's change, and you've got to kind of go back to the beginning again and explain to someone new why you've done what you've done. And it happens on a lot of projects. Staff change within the organisations. You might have a different contractor that'll come on and you're always having to restart and justify things again. So we did have to do that on a few occasions on this project with different project managers and different people. It's quite common, but it can be a bit tiring sometimes to do that.
Yeah, of course. 3 years sounds like a lot. Yeah, thank you, Ruben, for your question. If you guys have any other questions, please put them in the comments. We definitely have time for more questions. I have another question. I was really interested in your perspective on collaborating with the community groups, because obviously you had the people who were going to use the youth centre, I'm presuming a youth council of sorts that's within the council, and young people who'd used the area, used the services before. What was their involvement from kind of start to finish, and what's the most valuable thing you took out of those consultations?
Because this project was such a long one, the people that were involved did change a lot as well, because the city have a different youth reference group. I think every year people get older and move along and stuff. So I think there was only one person who was kind of consistent, but the rest of them kind of came and went. So it was, in a way, it was good because we got lots of different people's perspective. So we started with them at the very beginning, just quite high level, getting ideas, but we ended up working with the current youth reference group quite a lot during construction, and we actually got them to help pick furniture. So we got all the chairs taken down there and they got to vote on which chair they wanted and the color of the fabric and stuff. So it was just little things like that that I think they made the biggest difference, because they could actually walk into the space and see, that they'd picked that chair or that they'd helped design the artwork. So even though we had them involved in that high level design thinking, they can't necessarily relate that back to the building, whereas they can walk in and see a chair or a picture on a wall. So I think that was really important, and that kind of gives them a real sense of pride that they can physically see the impact that they had. So I think that was really good.
Yeah, of course. No, that's amazing to hear. It's lovely to see that. I guess it's their space, so yeah, it's really beautiful. That's what And we do have a question from Kieran. Is that Kieran? Is that you, Kieran? Karen, would you like to ask the question? Or do you want me to read it out?
Yeah, hi. I'm so excited about this project because I've just done a while ago a massive chunk of research at Curtin University regarding youth mental health and studied headspace precedents. So I was like really curious to know over the duration of the project, like how much the design changed in regards to COVID-19 in the design of your spaces, but also in regards to the demand of the services that you needed to provide.
The original brief when we had the first site was basically it was a drop-in centre. That was all it was going to be. It was basically a big open space with a few rooms that could potentially be used for something more. And then when halfway through the sort of developing the original site, the City of Rockingham actually went through a massive restructure and redid their whole strategic plan for youth services. So that was kind of why the second building ended up being double the size, because they decided they also wanted to basically put all of their youth services into this building. So we kind of went from one building, which was half the size with just a big open empty space, to this one, which needed to have offices, counselling rooms, more hireable activity spaces. So they were quite keen on using it to support other services in the community. So they do hire them out to, I think Headspace are possibly looking at using them eventually. And there's a few other services that kind of come in to run different workshops.
So it's more the community than an actual Headspace building per se.
Headspace have the building opposite, so they run out of that.
Oh, great.
There was a discussion. I don't know if it ended up happening, but if they needed more space, they might run more workshops rather than the one-on-one stuff. They might use this facility more for the group workshops. From my understanding at the moment, it's pretty much only being run by the City of Rockingham. I don't think they've quite got it kind of got the interest, or they just haven't. Last time I heard, I'm not sure that they were hiring it out as much as they wanted, but it was basically designed that they could separate areas off, so they could have the upstairs hired out for someone. There's a lot of, I think they were looking at doing like young mothers groups and things there, running. They do a lot of educational type things like skills, career workshops, resume writing, all of those type of things. And they've kind of got lots of different spaces they can do that in. They've kind of just found, we didn't really have a brief. There was no facility manager when we started. The facility manager actually didn't start until I think a month before construction finished. So we never had a clear brief of how it was going to be run. It was a bit of a make us plenty of flexible spaces and we'll figure out how to use them once we get in there. So they've really learnt along with us on what they were going to do in there, and they've kind of made it their own. The facility manager did a fantastic job. She's unfortunately since left, but she really took it in that first year and turned it into what it is. And they've just found things to do. They've found that they can use the space downstairs for gardening. They've done bike repairs in that undercover area. They're looking at setting up coffee machines to run barista classes because they're getting quite a lot of demand from young people in the area wanting to do that. So they're kind of letting it evolve into what people need it to be a little bit. In regards to COVID, this was actually pretty much done before COVID. We were in construction during COVID, so that was sort of not really a thing at the time of the design. So they haven't, I don't think that's really obviously.
Yeah, it's an interesting area. Would there be anything that you'd bring forward from lessons for this project to a similar project, like maybe regarding COVID now?
Yeah, I haven't really thought about it in terms of COVID. I mean, the spaces are really flexible, so they could quite easily be separated off if they needed to, have different areas. Yeah, I know when I went down there during COVID, it was all functioning exactly the same as what it was when COVID wasn't there. I think my understanding, it didn't really make too much of a difference to it, but I think they were probably a bit busier during COVID. There was a lot of people probably, I don't know, it wasn't even open during COVID. It opened once that was kind of almost over.
Yeah, congratulations on the results. I just love seeing sites where it just looks really rough and they just get turned into something amazing. So yeah, it's a lovely project.
Thank you so much for the question, Karen. No, that's such a great thing. I loved hearing about how they've been using it for things that you didn't even write in the brief. That's such a cool thing. I feel like that's also kudos to how flexible the spaces are, which is really, really nice. Before I ask a question, Ruben, I have another question before I forget. You spoke about how when you went on site, you were finding new things every time that changed the way that it was being constructed, like things that weren't up to code and up to standard, structure that needed to be redone. What was, I guess, can you expand on the kind of process of having to deal with something like that? And then after talking about how if there was anything else that was really surprising on site that you didn't really realize, and it kind of put through, not even through a spanner in the works, but just redirected the path that you were going on.
This one wasn't too bad. Like it wasn't, we had things like we found footings and that we didn't know were there when we demolished some walls. There was little things like that. Nothing that really I can think of that made a massive difference to the end design. Not that I can think of, but it was, yeah, I mean, there's always little bits and pieces. Like they found that all the lights, the external lights that we were going to keep because we couldn't afford to replace them weren't working. So there was just continual things like that. There were mostly little things. There was no really big ones on this project because we basically gutted the whole building, so we weren't going to keep a huge amount anyway, except for the existing walls. But there was a few, nice, pleasant surprises about things, like when you remove the walls at the back. You can't see it in this image, but when you're actually inside the building and you look through that yellow screen, the back of the site is just a vacant piece of dirt basically, but from the inside, because of the way the screen works, it actually looks like there's this whole landscaped area behind. We didn't know that at the beginning because the building was so enclosed and it had these horrible brick walls. So there was things like that until you started it, we didn't plan, the yellow screen wasn't planned to be done like that so that it reflected that landscape, but it was a bit of a happy accident that it created this really interesting kind of layering of landscape when you look through the building, and we didn't know that to start with. So there was always little things like that when you pull all the internal walls out, you realize how big the space is and things like that. So there was a few nice surprises as well.
Oh, lovely, thank you. Ruben's asking, what would you do differently if you had to do it all over again?
There's always little things, but then we're always perfectionists. So there's always things that bug me. Like, there's one bit of wall that was painted the wrong color and things that no one else will ever know. But every time I go there, I'm like, oh, I didn't pick that up, or the builder installed the wrong tile or something. And they're little things like that. I think we're pretty happy with it. And there wasn't really any big things that we'd probably do differently, I don't think. I think that we were obviously limited on what we could do within our 4 walls. So I think I don't think there's anything big, just little bits and pieces maybe.
Yeah, that's good to know. I have a question around like procuring a project like this. So like even before any of this happened, were you approached by the government to work on a project like this, or was there a tender?
Yeah, this was a tender, would have been, well, I'm trying to remember now, but yeah, I'm pretty sure this one would have been a tender.
Were you part of that process?
Not, I don't think so. No, I ain't putting the fee together. I don't think, can't remember. It was a while ago. Yeah, I don't think it was.
Okay. Well,
yeah, most local government ones are a tender kind of pack process.
Do you know why site architecture won this specific?
There's usually a number of criteria that they look at: cost, experience, capability. So it's not really a one. They kind of put a whole bunch of stuff together and obviously work out who out of a group. It's a fairly standard tender kind of process that you all put in a submission with a fee, and that kind of all gets ranked. I can't exactly remember how many would have put in for this, and it was a while ago. And then obviously we actually had to re-tender again when they changed the site. So they actually didn't just give it back to us. We had to basically resubmit to win the job again once they changed the building.
Okay, sweet. Ruben's asked the question. Hi, Naomi. Do you think you'll be taking on any more youth projects?
I'd love to. I'm actually not working for site architecture anymore, so I am actually working for someone else who does a lot of similar work. I really enjoyed this project. I think, I would happily do another youth centre if one came up. Definitely.
I do have a question about your team. So obviously, most of the people who are on today are students, and they probably might be working as a student in architecture, or might be a new graduate of architecture. What was the team makeup for this project like? How many people were on? What was the responsibilities? What were your responsibilities? And did you how did your team work, I guess, on a project?
So for the majority of the time, it was Paul, who was the project director. I was also director of the firm, and myself. So we kind of were the consistent people from the beginning. And then we had assistance from a few other grads in the office they helped out with the drawings, preparing the documentation, a lot of that stuff. And most of it was kind of, because it's a smallish project, was kind of done, fair amount was done by myself, but I didn't do everything. Paul was sort of the project director, so he just oversaw it. He was kind of would answer any questions, deal with some of the client and the contractual sort of stuff. But a lot of the day-to-day work was done by me, and then my team helped out with a lot of the documentation. We work pretty collaboratively at site, so we would always have regular project meetings. Everyone gets to have a say. We work pretty openly in all projects like that, so everyone gets to have an opinion and put forward what they think is going to work, and we'll discuss it and work through details together. So we work pretty closely as a team in the office generally.
Yeah, sweet. Obviously, you mentioned that you are you're project architect, you're an emerging architect, and I know you didn't mention this, but this project actually won the WA award for an Imagine project. Is that because you were the emerging architect learning from a director and kind of that process? How does that differ from like a usual team? And then you obviously you got your registration through this project, yeah. And so what was that process like? So registering as a graduate and also leading a project, like what?
I mean, it was actually really good because I had like current experience to use in the exam process. So it was really good. We had this project and a couple of others that were sort of similar size and complexities that I was able to draw on a lot of actual experience rather than just, just watching other people. So I had a lot of first-hand experience that I could actually apply in the exams, which was really good. And this one was, it wasn't the biggest project. It's not a massive scale project, but there was lots of small things in it that were challenging. So I think I did learn quite a bit from it.
Yeah, it's really good because I feel like when you think about graduating and then sitting that examination, it's a little bit daunting because obviously the 35, what I know is 35 competencies you learn at uni, and then the others you learn in practice. So obviously taking from first-hand experience is much more logical, I guess, in learning lessons than reading it out of a book.
Yeah, and you learn much more, in the first few years of working, definitely. But it's just about, asking lots of questions. I'd encourage everyone to get out to site as much as possible because you learn so much more actually seeing things constructed than just drawing them in the office. So that's really important to get out, to go out and look at and see how we deal with contractors, the kind of problems that come up on site. I think that's a really, really important part of the process.
Yeah, perfect. It seems like such an exciting thing to just be that person constantly with the engineer and with the chippy who's working on site, and then making sure that this is working and that kind of, it's such an exciting
It's good, but it has its challenges, and it can be stressful when they're, you need wanting answers right away. And if you don't know, you just say you don't know, and you've got to go and check. Sometimes you've just got to just say, no, I can't tell you this right now. I'll go back to the office and I'll let you know, kind of thing. Which is sometimes hard when they're telling you that you're going to cause a delay if you don't give them an answer right now. But
You have to, yeah. You have to sometimes just be like, I don't know. You're right. And that's normal, isn't it? I guess. Honestly.
yeah, well, you don't want to give them the wrong answer. So yeah, it's always safer to go and find out.
Did you have any aha moments? We go, oh my God, I didn't know that. And then
Always. Always. Yeah. Can't think of anything specific, but yeah, you're always learning. I'm still learning. I think every project's got different challenges, so you learn stuff on every project. Different people, different needs. Yeah, I don't think there's ever going to be a project that's just a copy and a paste. You always have to think about it and learn new things on every job.
Definitely, yeah. And being like a new graduate is quite daunting, I guess. Thinking about like, what am I supposed to know? What do people need me to know? Like, going into a new job, what kind of things is my employer going to expect of me? And then like that kind of, we're worried about asking questions. And obviously you said ask as many questions as you can. Ruben said, besides being on site, what other advice do you have for students and graduates?
Like I said, yeah, ask lots of questions. Just listen. Like, you learn a lot just by listening to what's going on in the office around you. If you're hearing people talking, just absorb what's happening around you. Try and take it in, and you definitely learn a lot. You don't realize you're learning it, but you definitely will, just by listening to what everyone else is doing and looking at drawings, looking at what the office is producing. Even if it's not a project that you're involved in, try and see what other people are doing, because you will definitely learn a lot from that.
Yeah, totally. As an emerging architect, obviously, and as a student yourself now, what's the biggest piece of advice anyone's given you as I guess, and you just something that you constantly remember, or something you give to other people?
I can't think of anything. I don't know. Probably the asking questions. I mean, that was probably, everyone always says that, but yeah, I can't think of anything else at the moment.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Have we got any other last minute questions before we wrap up today? Please send through anything you've got. Obviously, I'll just wait a little bit. But yeah, perfect. Thank you so much, Naomi, for spending your time and coming to speak to us today. We've obviously learned a lot, and it's nice to share such a lovely project, such a successful project with the rest of with all SONA members. And obviously this will be available as a recording, so more people will have access to that later on who missed out on it. But yeah, are there any last words, final words?
No, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me, and yeah, hopefully it's been somewhat informative. Perfect.
Thank you so much, Naomi, and thank you so much, everyone, for attending. It was so lovely to. Oh, sorry, got a random phone call. So lovely to see you all here. And yeah, we'll see you at the next one. Next one is on the 24th of October, and we're going to be talking about pathways in architecture.